Hello, today I'm coming to you with a hat because I'm having a bad hair day. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, but for some reason I've been putting it off. I recently rewatched one of my favorite animated movies of all time, and I was like, I gotta make this video because I want to talk about animated movies. Obviously, I'm a big Disney fan. I love pretty much all the Disney movies, all of them, but I just feel like there's so many underrated movies that nobody really ever talks about. Probably because they're not Disney. I want to talk about them because they're really good, but like people don't know about them. So today I want to count down my top 5 favorite non-Disney 2D animated movies of all time. I think at number 5 I want to put a movie that I love so dearly, but I know that technically it's probably not a great movie. So like if you disagree with me on this one, I get it. But don't click away from this video. Don't judge me based on this number 5. This number 5 is just really special to me personally, okay? So, at number 5, I'm gonna put Thumbelina by Don Bluth.
Very small girl, no bigger than a thumb.
I wish I were big. Don't ever wish to be anything but what you are.
This movie is so special to me. I'm a huge Don Bluth fan. Thumbelina, for me, I watched that movie on repeat when I was a child. So Thumbelina obviously is based on the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale about a little girl who is born from a flower and she's like the size of a thumb. So in this story, Thumbelina is sad because she is smaller than everyone else and she feels lonely and she feels different, and all she wants is to have someone who understands her, who loves her for who she is, you know, a small little Thumbelina. And then she meets this fairy prince who is her size and really charming, and they fall in love immediately, which I know is cliche, but in this movie I think it works. They have this beautiful song. It's really similar to A Whole New World by Aladdin, but I think it's better than A Whole New World by Aladdin. It's one of the most beautiful songs in an animated movie ever. It's so romantic.
Be my wings.
Be your wings. Get ready for another world of wondrous things.
You have this fairy prince and Thumbelina just riding around in the night sky on a bumblebee, and it's so pretty. And basically that's when things go wrong and Thumbelina gets lost and she has to find her way home, and the fairy prince tries to save her. And basically I think this movie is about Thumbelina realizing her worth and realizing that she can do stuff because she keeps saying it's impossible, I can't do it, it's impossible. And she's kind of a pushover, especially in the beginning. I, as a child, always really related to Thumbelina. I don't know, maybe because my self-worth wasn't the best, just like Thumbelina's. Thumbelina often feels like, I can't do this, but then she realizes that she can. That's what I get from it. I know a lot of people hate on this movie, but I just think it's wonderful. To be fair, I think the biggest reason I love this movie so much is because I had the biggest crush on Prince Cornelius. Still do. Honestly, still do. I think he's so charming, and I think he's better than any Disney prince. I just love him. That's it. But yeah, I do see how this movie, there's problems with it. There's a lot of plot holes. There's a lot of cringy dialogue. Some characters, very questionable. But overall, this movie just makes me feel so happy. And for anyone who loves fantasy, I feel like you have to watch this movie. I think it's so stunning. And it's a very traditional fairy tale story. You know, in this day and age, people don't really believe in that stuff anymore. And I get it. Like, realistically, I get it. But I still really enjoy it in my fantasy. I'm a sucker for that stuff. So yeah, that's what I really like. Don Bluth's Thumbelina. Then, coming in at number 4, I have the movie The Prince of Egypt. The Prince of Egypt is a DreamWorks animation, and it is so stunning. It's one of the most beautiful animated movies I've ever seen.
Everything I am is a lie.
You are our son.
I can't stay here any longer. Moses, please. Abandon this futile mission, Moses.
The Prince of Egypt tells the very famous Bible story of Moses, although they've given it a little bit of a twist. It's just such a heartfelt story. I feel like they really put their focus on the right elements of the story to really draw in the audience. I feel like most people know this story already, but basically the Hebrew slaves were being prosecuted, and one mother manages to send off her firstborn son on the Nile River. That firstborn son is Moses. His little baby basket arrives at the pharaoh's home, and the royal family decides to raise him as their own. So we have Moses and his brother Ramses, who grow up. Eventually Moses finds out his true past. This sets off his inner conflict of, my actual people are being treated as slaves by the family that I've grown up with and thought was my real family all this time. What I think is really good about this movie is how they focus very hard on the relationship between Moses and Ramses as brothers, because as brothers they grew up together. They were so close because of, the situation of Egypt, with the Egyptians and the Hebrews being like put up against each other. Basically, they're being put up against each other, and it's so heartbreaking, and the movie does such a good job at telling that story. This movie also has one of the best movie soundtracks of all time. Just watch the intro song of this movie. It is the most epic thing you will ever hear. It is so good. I believe the soundtrack was done by Hans Zimmer. My favorite song of the soundtrack is called The Plagues. It's basically the moment when Ramses and Moses are, going head to head, and Moses is saying, "Let my people go," and Ramses is like, I cannot do that. But like, they don't want to be at war, but they have to, and it's just so heartbreaking.
I will never let your people go.
That's my favorite of the soundtrack, but I love all the songs. And on top of that, the visuals, the shots they use make Egypt look so grand and epic. There's a moment where Moses splits the sea in half, and they're just like walking through like the ocean when they're in the palace, and you can just see Egypt outside and just how vast it is. My favorite scene is probably when Moses goes to see Ramses and he tries to plead with him. And it's like the moment where Ramses realizes that him and Moses are no longer brothers, they are enemies now. The emotions displayed on his face, they make me cry. He goes from being hopeful to being shocked to being really sad and grieving to being just angry. It's just so good. I could go on about this movie forever. Yeah, I love The Prince of Egypt. If you haven't seen it, you gotta watch it. Then at number 3, I've got a movie that I don't know how many people know, because whenever I mention this movie, people don't know what I'm talking about. It was almost to the point where I thought I made the movie up, but then I checked it and I found it, and yes, it exists, and I think it's really good. It is called Little Nemo Adventures in Slumberland.
The Boston Globe proclaims Little Nemo to be a marvelous piece of fantasy. The Washington Post declares it impressively grand. A great film, writes the New York Post, while Newhouse newspapers call it an elegantly animated magic carpet ride.
This is another movie that not everybody likes, but I genuinely think it is stunning. So first of all, the way this movie was kind of created and came together is really strange, because there's a lot of big names attached to it. Chris Columbus worked on it, Miyazaki worked on it, Ray Bradbury, who's my favorite author, Ray Bradbury was involved in this. And on top of that, the Sherman brothers were involved in this, like a lot of big names, okay? And so I find it strange that not more people talk about it. Little Nemo in Slumberland is based on a really old comic book. Basically, it's this little boy who, in his dreams, goes to this magical world called Slumberland and goes on an adventure. It's a very standard fantasy movie, but I think it is done really beautifully, and I find it one of the most imaginative movies, I guess I would say. I don't know, just everything about this movie is just so pleasing to me. You have this little boy, Nemo, who is just an absolute sweetheart. He says a lot of things like, "Gee whiz," and "Whippy," which is just so cute. I think some people might find that annoying, but I just think it's cute. I love the way this movie talks about dreams, because it's really a movie about dreams and nightmares. What this movie does really well is make you feel like you're in a dream. It's really weird. No other movie has been able to do it the way Nemo does. I love how everything from his real life comes to life in his dreams in a different way, in a more fantastical way. It just captures the feeling of a dream perfectly, like how not everything makes sense, like how the way Nemo goes from one room to another makes absolutely no sense. He's like going through this castle and like the room is upside down and then suddenly he falls into a black hole and he's in this toy room and it's like, how? But it makes sense because it's a dream, and that is how things go in a dream. And I know people may think that's a cop-out and like lazy writing, but I think for this movie it works. There's also moments in the movie where he wakes up from his dream, and more, every single time he wakes up from his dream, little things from his dream seem to seep into his real life. I just find that so cool. More and more the lines between reality and dreams seem to blur together. I think the movie is also visually really beautiful. I love the use of color. There's just something so visually pleasing about this movie. It's just so aesthetic. I love the way all the characters look. Nemo himself looks kind of bland, but I think that's because he's the only like non-fantastical being. All the other characters are so beautiful and colorful. By the way, the princess in this movie is like one of my earliest female crushes. I just fell completely in love with this princess, and even now she's just so stunning. I love the sequences where they're flying through the sky and there's all of these really like imaginative things that happen only in dreams. I can't even explain it, so I'm just putting it up on the screen because I don't know how else to explain it. There's also a lot of just satisfying scenes. Another thing I really like about this movie is how it's not afraid to go dark. Even the first scene, you have Nemo flying in his bed over the sky, but then it turns into this really creepy nightmare, and I'm just like, Disney could never. That's why when I was a kid, I never really saw Disney movies as being real. Even as a kid, I knew that Aladdin didn't really happen. Beauty and the Beast didn't really happen. It's a Disney movie. But movies like Nemo in Slumberland and a lot of more darker animated movies, for some reason, felt real to me. As a kid, I was like 100% Nemo in Slumberland actually happened. I don't know, there's something about daring to be scary for children. As a child, this movie scared me, but it still made me want to watch it, and the fact that it scared me made it more real to me. I don't know how it works. I don't know the science behind it, but the fact that this movie actually is scary, I really appreciate, because as a kid, I was all about it. I was all about it. I also really like the little, like, boobs? I don't know what they're called. The little goblin guys in the movie. I just find them so cute, and I have been looking for, like, plushies of them, and I cannot find any. If anybody knows any, like, Little Nemo merch, send me the links, because I want Little Nemo merch. But yeah, that's Little Nemo. I freaking adore this movie. If you're into, like, classic fantasy, this is it. Okay. Then, at number 2, I have got a movie that, when I was a child, I called my favorite movie. Now it's still one of my favorite movies of all time, and it is called Balto.
Universal Pictures and Amblin Entertainment invite you to join on an incredible adventure into the heart of a hero.
Balto is just, I'm gonna use the word again, heartfelt. I just think it's such a heartfelt story. It tells a story of Balto based on a true story, but I would say loosely, very loosely based on a true story. It's set in Alaska, in a little town where a lot of the children are getting sick and there's no more serum for them. There's no more medicine. And a group of sled dogs? A group of dogs have to go to this other place to pick up the serum and bring it safely back to the town so the children can be saved. And the main character is Balto. He is half wolf, half dog. Because he is half wolf, half dog, he doesn't belong, and the humans don't trust him because he's not a real dog, so he's a little wild. The other dogs don't want him because he's half wolf, and he just feels really left out, and it's kind of heartbreaking. Honestly, this whole movie is very, very heartbreaking. I think Balto is animated so beautifully. Like, Balto, the character himself, has such a kind face. You just care so much for this half dog. He has a crush on this other dog, and this other dog's owner is sick, and so he decides he wants to save all the children. He's gonna try to bring back the medicine, and it's so beautiful. I just love the theme of Balto. He's not dog, he's not wolf. So in the beginning, all he focuses on is what he's not. But then by the end, he realizes that it's not about what he's not, it's about what he is, because he is dog and he is wolf. You know, that's his strength, and he manages to realize that. And I just find that so powerful, because I think that's a really human struggle that I think a lot of people deal with as well. The movie talks a lot about prejudice, how people don't trust him because he is half wolf. I think a lot of that you can relate to humans, and questions about race and identity. I just think it's really cleverly done. I also really love how the humans in this story are kind of non-characters. They're really like, you don't really hear them much. It's all about all the animals, and you see this very human problem from the animals' perspective. I found that really interesting. I think the theme of this movie is quite heavy, but luckily there are some like comic relief characters, and I feel like the side character of the duck or goose, what is he? Anyways, he walks a fine line between being cringy and actually funny, but I think he just tips over the funny side, so like it works. I just love dogs, you know? And it's the best dog movie, except maybe The Unforgettable Journey. Anyways, yeah, I just think Balto is an amazing movie. Before I move into my number one favorite movie, I want to have some honorable mentions. A movie that almost made it into the list is Leafy, Hen of the Wild. This is a South Korean animated movie, and it is about a chicken who runs away from a battery farm and finds a abandoned egg. She decides to mother it, and so we have this chicken who ends up raising a duckling, and it is about their relationship. This movie is visually really stunning, but also the themes of this are just so good, because you have this duck raised by a chicken, and how the rest of the nature world reacts to that is really interesting. The only reason I didn't put it in because it is too sad and it makes me cry, it destroys me. Some of my other favorites are Anastasia. This one I don't think is like a super high quality movie, but I do think it has one of the best soundtracks of all time. And I also love the hate to love relationship of Anastasia and Dimitri. I obviously really love The Land Before Time. That goes without saying. It's a beautiful movie. I also really love Rockadoodle. That's another one of Don Bluth's questionable movies, but for some reason Rockadoodle is just, I just love it. Another honorable mention is Spirited Away. I haven't named any Ghibli movies in this list. I really appreciate Ghibli movies, but they're not my favorite. But I do really like Spirited Away. I like Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle. I like Totoro as well. But they didn't make the list, I'm sorry. And another one I really like is the Nutcracker Prince movie that was made in 1990, I believe. I don't think anybody knows that movie, but it's like really special to me, and it's probably the reason I love the Nutcracker so much. But yeah, those are some honorable mentions. And then we have our number one pick, my favorite 2D animated movie of all time that is not Disney. But it's also just my favorite animated movie of all time, honestly. It is The Secret of NIMH by Don Bluth. I told you before, I'm a sucker for Don Bluth. I love all of his movies, but nothing's ever gonna beat The Secret of NIMH.
I must tell you about NIMH. Look there.
The Secret of NIMH is just one of those movies that is so special. Like I talked about before when I talked about Little Nemo, The Secret of NIMH scared the crap out of me as a child. I was terrified of this movie, but I kept watching it. I kept coming back and watching it, even as a child when I was scared of it, because there is something about The Secret of NIMH that makes it so real to me. As a kid, I was 100% it was real. Even now, I know it's crazy, but The Secret of NIMH really happened. It's a thing. It's so real to me. I don't know what it is. It's weird because, as a kid, it was so real to me that it made me even uncomfortable to watch it. It was creepy, it was scary because it was so real. But I think that just goes to show how much it made me feel. Because this movie makes me feel more than other movies, and I don't know why. So The Secret of NIMH is a story about a mother mouse called Mrs. Brisby. She's in trouble because her home is about to be destroyed by human farmers, but she's in trouble because her son is ill. So she goes to find help from the Society of Highly Intelligent Rats. On her way there, she meets this elder rat who gives her a kind of amulet. And so these really intelligent rats in the story, the reason they're so intelligent is because they were experimented on by humans in an experiment experimental plan called Nim. These rats have escaped from the humans and now they are kind of planning to evolve and evolve and evolve. And for example, they've been stealing electricity from the humans. The whole message of the story, I guess it's up to interpretation, but it's a lot about human versus nature. You know, how man is destroying nature and animals, but also you have these rats who suddenly are intelligent, and with this intelligence comes a kind of moral conflict where it's like, we're intelligent enough to steal electricity from these humans, but you know, should we? It's sort of like these rats manage to get a certain power. It is about the evolution of them and how that changes them. That kind of message is kind of woven in throughout the story. And you have this little mother mouse who is kind of the moral compass of the movie. I really am not explaining this well. If by any chance you haven't watched it, I feel like it's kind of like a cult favorite. People who love animation probably have seen this movie and love this movie. Because it's, you know, it's that kind of a movie. But if you, by any chance, have not watched this movie, I really, really highly recommend it. It is creepy and disturbing at times, but it is so well done. It is so special. There is no other movie like it. So I think those are all of the movies I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about animated movies. I just am very passionate about animation. 2D animation is still my favorite way to consume movies, and I really wish there were more of them. Please let me know in the comments what your favorite non-Disney 2D animated movies are, because I want to know all of them, and there's probably some that I maybe have never seen before. I also want to make a video about like really bad animated movies that I love regardless, because there are some of those too. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for me today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you in my next video. Goodbye!